The following podcast is a Dear Media production.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Real Stuff podcast. You all know that this is a platform where I love allowing people to come on and open up about juicy, taboo, deep, dark stories. And today's guest is opening up big time and telling all. I first learned about Brett Fairley when his girlfriend, Nurse Hadley, came onto The Real Stuff as a guest. If you remember our recent episode with the hospice nurse, Hadley, she came on and we heard a lot about her career, but then she also dove in to this insane drama that has been unfolding across the internet involving her current boyfriend, Brett Fairley. Stories are extremely nuanced and you need to pay attention to the details. And Brett has put in the time to gather all of the evidence. He has receipts. He has photos. He has screenshots. He has the timestamps. He has everything. And he has compiled a binder of evidence to clear his name in this situation where he has been wrongly accused of something. I consider this story to be a story of abuse. I hope you'll give this episode a listen because Brett explains not only all the stuff that he's already sharing across his social media channels, but he also gives us a lot of personal, deep insights that he hasn't shared elsewhere that really made me think. And if you want to do any of your own digging, I'm sure you can search it up and find as much as you want on the internet. I'll leave it at that because this was a long conversation, but let's get into it with Brett Fairley. Welcome to the Real Stuff podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I, of course, had to show up to this episode with my tea because you are giving us more tea than we deserve on the internet. And this story is absolutely mind-blowing. People are following you. Thousands of people are following along with this saga that to date, as I'm recording this, there have been 6 parts that have come out, but you're still in the beginning of this story.
Correct. Yeah, we're about halfway through and there's just so much more to uncover. People are getting a little feisty. You want me to drop them faster, but this is a story that the devil's in the details and it just takes time.
It sure does. But I don't know how much my audience knows about the whole story, and I don't want to spoil the ending of it, which is kind of the where we're at today. I know you're not done dropping all the parts on your social media, so we will tell people where they can go after this to finish the rest of the story. But let's tell the story up to where you've shared so far with the public. That all goes back to the night of December 12th, 2020, the first night that you met Maria.
Correct, that fateful night. Me and my brother actually go get lunch and we go eat some crawfish. We're in the South. It's like a delicacy down here. As soon as we walk in, there's a birthday party going on. And lo and behold, it's Maria's birthday party 2 weeks early. We start drinking and they've already been drinking a lot and they invite us to their birthday party, a few tables over. One thing turned to another and we ended up going out that night and we had a one-night stand. After that, I would see her around and I actually knew that she had hooked up with a few of my friends.
Just to be clear, do the 2 of you live in the same small town?
Well, she's originally from here, but she was living in New Orleans at the time.
Okay, so you just run into her at this restaurant, you start talking to her, you have a one-night stand. How old are you at this time?
At this time, I just turned 24.
Did you have any attraction to her? Did you feel any emotional connection to her after hanging out with her? Or it was really just, I'm drunk and going home with someone?
It was really just me being 24, I'm drunk, and I'm going home with someone tonight.
Okay, so she was coming to visit where you lived. She kind of became a friend and someone that you and your friends saw around.
Yeah, and it's a small town, so, we're going out every weekend, and it's like 1 or 2 bars to go to. So you always see people that are regulars.
And so how many of your friends did she also get with?
I can count at least 2, but knowing her, there's God knows how many.
Now take us to the spring of the following year, 2021.
Okay, so 2021 in April, she asked me to be a sperm donor to get her pregnant. And at first I'm like, fuck no, I would never do that. After some convincing, I felt like I was doing something nice for somebody.
Okay, wait, we got to backtrack here. How tight of a relationship did you guys have in this interim time period that she would even consider coming up to you and asking you that kind of question?
We never text or talked or anything. It was out of a nowhere text that I got.
It was out of nowhere. Okay, so it wasn't like you guys were hanging out all the time.
No.
And you would never have described her as a friend.
We were friendly. I felt like I was doing something for a friend. If someone asked you nicely for hey, can I borrow $20? I was like, yeah, like I'll love you $20, whatever.
Okay, and what was her rationale? I really want to be a mom. Oh, by the way, we didn't even mention, how old was she at the time?
I think she was 30 or just turned 31.
Okay, and so how did she phrase this to you? I really want to be a mom. What did she say?
She said that she's been single forever, hasn't had good luck with men, and all of her friends are having kids, and she was of the age where she really wanted a kid, didn't think it was going to happen, otherwise.
I've heard you talk about this being the single, in hindsight, worst decision of your life. And you, in your words, call yourself a dumb idiot, a young guy who made a big mistake. And, you have no problem calling yourself out.
Yeah, I mean, in hindsight, it's always 2020. But, at the time, you're like, yeah, I've already hooked up once. Like, sure.
I just want to go back to it because a lot of people make really stupid decisions in their teens. And, you could even get a pass on certain decisions in your early 20s. But what could have possibly in your life led you to say yes to this? Was it that she offered money and you needed the money? Are you just this naive, nice person who wants to help others and you can't say no and you're a people pleaser? Like, tell us, Brett, why did you do this?
I really thought I was just doing something nice for somebody. I've always been a giver. And I don't know. They say people who they receive gifts and they don't like it, they like to give instead. I'm one of those people. I feel weird when people give me stuff, but if I can give stuff away, I'm like, I love it. It makes me feel good.
Did you think at all about the child and how they might come looking for you years down the line?
Initially I want to say yeah, like I originally said no, and I was like, I don't want anything to do with that. But at the same time, if I can give someone the gift of life, and I feel like I'm doing something holy at this point. I'm getting ready to move across the country. I'm in my I want to travel phase. So I'm not too concerned and looking too far down the line.
So you refer to yourself as this discount sperm donor.
Yeah.
How much did she pay you?
I actually received $0. So it was the pitch of, IVF costs a lot. We've already hooked up. Like, will you just do me a solid, do me a favor?
Okay. You agree. Did you tell anyone in your life that you were doing this?
I think I told one or two friends, and they called me a fucking idiot. It's not like I was dead set on it either, too. Like, I said yes, and then, it just happened. I don't know. I never had anyone try to really talk me out of it.
Just to understand the mechanics of this, because any couple that's tried to conceive knows that it's not always one shot. There's sometimes months and months of trying before you actually successfully get pregnant. How many times did it take before you were told that it was successful?
2 weekends. So I can account for the day that she told me she got her arm implant out.
That was her birth control implant.
It was, yes. It was in her arm. She had it removed. And, shortly after that, there's 2 weekends in a row that we were together. And then I go out of town for a week for Memorial Day in California and come back. And that's when she tells me she's pregnant. I'm like, sick. Congrats.
Something that's really interesting about this whole story with her is that from the very start of this all, like even starting around this time when you slept with her again for this purpose, she is, it seems, trying to convince people around her in her social sphere and in your social sphere that the two of you are in a relationship. And she's constantly posting photos of the two of you together. Anytime you're together, trying to get a photo and uploading it to her personal social media accounts, which, by the way, she's not an influencer. She has a small following of her friends. She's just a real person. She would be posting you in these photos. So at this time, she was kind of putting that on display, correct?
Yeah, correct. And I'd be, in these photos, and I would never share them to my profile.
And your plan was to get her pregnant, and then you were preparing to move to California.
Yep, I was prepping to move to California. I had a friend that joined the military. I went out and visited. That's where he got stationed, and I visited and fell in love with it. So I bought an old ambulance, and I was going to convert it to an RV and drive it out there.
She tells you she's pregnant, and throughout this time of her pregnancy, correct me if I'm wrong, but she kind of starts, for lack of a better word, weaseling her way into your life. She's befriending your mom. She's starting to text her mom. Tell us what happened there.
So I'm out of town every weekend, and you're either there or working on that van so I can move. And it felt like this stranger, even though I allegedly gotten her pregnant, she was trying to hijack my life. It was like someone doing identity fraud, but trying to take all your friends and family. It was just odd.
What kind of stuff was she saying to your friends?
I don't know. And she obviously loves Facebook, and she would just Facebook friend all my, send friend requests to my friends and family and just act like me and her were like this couple or family or going to be a family. I'm not sure. I just know during the pregnancy that she was mainly reaching out to my mom.
And so she's basically saying to your mom that she wants her to be there at the birth. And at what point in this pregnancy does she change her tune from being like, this is going to be no drama, no strings attached, you can move back to California, to, wait, I actually want us to be some sort of a unit?
So whenever she started reaching out to my mom, she told my mom that she, didn't get along with her family and she had no one. And she actually asked my mom to take care of the baby if anything ever happened to her, Maria. So, my mom's relaying this to me. She's like, they're indirectly pressuring me to be there for the birth and be in this baby's life.
So you had no plans of being at the birth?
No, not initially. Once I got her pregnant and I moved, I had no thoughts of ever coming back.
And then what made you go and be there?
I guess whenever my parents told me that a little girl is going to grow up without a dad, and at this point, there was communication right up before the birth with me and Maria. I was like, look, my parents are probably right, and then she initially then reiterated that I wouldn't be financially responsible. Like, I can just come and go as I please, blah, blah, blah. And that's not how it ended up happening.
So you go to the birth and you're very much in dad mode at this birth, despite the fact that you and Maria are not in a relationship and the two of you are not, expressing any love towards each other. You are the first person to hold the baby. You sign the birth certificate. Let's talk about that day.
We go to the hospital and it is like going to the birth of a stranger's child. I don't know if you ever watched the sex ed videos of, childbirth. I didn't. This is my first time seeing this, and I'm looking at a stranger. We didn't talk. I don't know anything about this woman. I don't even know her middle name. I don't even know how old she was really at the time. And I have to look and go through all this intimate stuff with someone that I don't even know.
Did you watch her push a baby out?
Yeah, I did. I was in the room the entire time.
And was she trying to hold your hand, trying to get support the way someone would from a spouse?
No, I wouldn't say it was like that at all. I was just kind of, off in the distance. Yeah, I was the stranger in the room watching some random baby be born.
Okay, got it. You see this intimate primal moment and then they give you the baby?
Yeah, I was so initially, the doctor takes the baby and hands the baby to me, and I'm the first person, aside from the doctor, to ever hold this baby. And, then under the circumstances, you think that everything you've been told is true, and someone hands you a baby and you're looking at it and you think it's yours. There's something in you that just clicks. I'm sure for mothers too, but as a dad, you're like, okay, I really need to get my life in order. I need to make sure she has a great future.
Yeah, wow. I mean, parents, we know the emotions around a baby being put in your arms for the first time and whether or not you feel, immediate acceptance of your new role as a mother or father. There's something in you that changes, and you do feel this primal desire to support the child in some way.
Yeah, it's if until you've done it, it's a really important first that I think everyone should go through. It just changes you. It makes you look at everything differently. It really is eye-opening.
Would you say that you felt immediately connected to the baby?
Yes, I felt like I had to be there to protect her. I made the right decision being there.
Okay, now after the baby is born, let's talk about the birth certificate, because a lot of people on social media are hung up on the fact that your biggest mistake in this situation is actually not agreeing to get her pregnant, but it's signing the birth certificate. And Can you just explain legally, what are you doing when you sign that paper and what are you saying?
Okay, so I'm, taking care of the baby. Whenever you have a baby, there's no tips and tricks. There's little posters on the wall, but you just have to start figuring it out. And I'm taking care of the baby, feeding her, changing her diapers. And the nurses come in with forms. And I don't know if you knew this, your first baby, but going in, did you know you were going to be signing the birth certificate that day? I didn't.
I guess I didn't think about it. I kind of guess I maybe thought they would have mailed it.
Yeah, anything government-wise, I thought came 2 weeks in the mail. So I definitely didn't expect to be signing anything that day. But
I'm going to be honest, I don't even remember signing a birth certificate.
I was just in court and they provided these documents. I had no idea. I did not remember signing those.
What does it actually say? That you are a legal guardian?
Yeah, so I'm actually on the birth certificate as the father. And there's also another form called acknowledgement of paternity. And when they presented that, my name was all over it. It basically states that you have a year within of the birth to get a paternity test. And then after that, you hereby forfeit all your rights. Like, you are legally binding forever, can't break this contract, the father.
Does everyone sign that?
Yes, at least in Mississippi. That's all I can speak on. But there's only one way to get out of it, and that is to prove fraud, which is incredibly hard to do.
Okay. We're getting somewhere now. Tell us about right after the birth. I know she set up a newborn shoot. She's sharing photos on Facebook. She's kind of making it look like you guys are this happy little family. But what is your dynamic with her and the baby at that stage?
I am with the baby for 2 weeks. I guess this is exactly a week later after she was born. I'm in my dad role. She told me that we were going to have a photo shoot. And I was like, okay, like, that's normal. And she said that she had ordered my dog a little handkerchief he was going to be in. My dog Max goes with me everywhere. So I was like, okay, like, that's like fine, I guess. My friends come over and get pictures with the baby too.
Just so I understand this, after you kind of had a change of heart, did you decide I'm not moving to California?
No, I was still moving to California because, based off the conversation we had before I even came home for the birth, she assured me that I was still able to come and go as I please. Like, I wouldn't be financially responsible. Basically, still no responsibilities.
So you did want the baby to know you.
Yeah.
Now it seems around the spring of this year, you fly home for Easter and there's this big family drama at Easter where she kind of yells at you in front of everyone. Can you tell us what happened there?
Yep. So it is about a month after the photo shoot. I fly back home again and spend a bunch of money on flights. And I block off my Airbnb dates, and we do this big family Easter party with my side of the family. And of course, Maria and the baby were invited. And my mom describes this as the day that she saw Maria slipping into something that was making me more than a sperm donor, something more than we agreed upon. I'm downstairs hanging out with my cousin and some friends, some family, and she's drinking a little more, and she leans over the rail looking down and on us in front of everyone. And she says, "Get your ass up here right now and take care of your child." And I'm like, okay, like, what is it?
Did you really feel no sense of responsibility at all?
Like, I was already still making plans of, like, buying my first car, like, thinking about college. Like, I was looking down the line at this point of things that I'd be willing to, help with.
But you were less, I guess, interested in caring for a baby.
I mean, I wasn't trying to, at this point, take the baby, by myself. We were at that point yet. She wanted to be a single mom, asked to be a single mom, and wanted to bear all the responsibilities as being a single mom. And then before the birth, she was like, "Look, if you want to get to know her, I think it's okay. Like, y'all are allowed to know each other, but, like, you don't have to do anything. Like, it's on me still." So I was like, okay, like, I'll just show up and be, dad.
So yeah, I think it's a really interesting nuanced situation where it really just proves to people how you need to understand the unique dynamic of a situation to make a judgment call on someone. Because I think everyone from the outside is applying the lens of a standard heterosexual relationship where it's mother and father and both partners, quote, should be equally involved, equally carrying the physical and mental weight. And you just were not in that situation. You never signed up to be in that situation. She made it clear that she didn't want that situation and wasn't looking for that situation, looking for you to do that. And so I think it's important that people carry that when they're hearing a story where you maybe weren't as involved and active with helping and doing the physical things that everyone sort of wants a dad to do.
I was already living in California at the time, and when I was there, I was trying to spend all the time I could with the baby. I was changing diapers, I was feeding her, like, I was in the dad role whenever I was there. It was just that instance at that party that she leaned over and, insulted and tried to embarrass me in front of everyone.
When was the first time that she ever asked you for money?
So it was probably 2 or 3 weeks later when she asked me to give her my house for free for my Airbnb and block it off for 2 months.
Okay, so you have an Airbnb that you typically rent out and make an income on?
Yep, and it was summertime, prime time season for rentals.
And you said, "I'll give this to you. You can live here with the baby for 2 months for free."
Well, at this point, we've already established that I didn't respond for 2 hours to the initial text she asked me, and she's already saying sign your rights away. Like, I wish I could just take the child away from you. And I didn't respond for like an hour and a half. But after being threatened with something like that, I felt like I had no choice but to be like, okay, like, y'all can stay there.
Were you afraid that she was going to take the baby out of your life? And was that genuinely something you were scared was going to happen?
Yeah, I was met with that threat constantly, and I didn't know any better. I didn't know what my rights were. I've never been in the court system before. I was really just kind of flying blind on what she was saying to me.
So can you tell us about all the money over time that you ended up sending to her? Because my understanding is that there were thousands more, not just the free housing.
Yeah, so let me flip here to my financial tab that I got put together.
He's going through the infamous binder.
So off of the Airbnb, so she initially didn't ask for money, but this is the way I was making money at the time. So without actually having to hand, cash over to her, this comes at a major financial burden to me where I'm not making any money and I'm covering, my mortgage, the internet, water, gas, electric, everything. So it's costing me a lot of money.
Was the income from that Airbnb your only income?
Yes, at the time. So it was a nice house on the water, and it's a beach town. So it stayed booked about 75% of the time. Well, the initial Airbnb loss, just based on what I was usually making during that time period, was about $30,000 that I lost the 3 months she was there.
And then what were some other requests?
So after the initial, I get served with child support, and I give her the $10,000 wire up front for back child support that I was never supposed to be liable for. To this day, I still don't think that I really would have been if I would have went to court and, fought that with her as a lawyer. But at the time, being naive, and I was living in Nashville at this point, that I just didn't want to deal with it. I thought lawyers cost a ton of money, and I was going to have to go in front of a judge, and they might make me pay more than that. I didn't know.
So that was $750 a month.
Yep, it was the $10,000 up front, and then $750 a month.
And at one point, she ends up putting in some sort of court order. What is that?
Yeah, so actually, she texted me. She was upset about something, and she said that she's wanting to take me to court for child support, and, that scares me. And she's like, hey, like, I already hired a lawyer. You can just use mine. Like, it'll be cheaper. I've already paid for it. He says that if you're going to go to court and fight it, you're going to pay, double what I'm asking you. So I'm like, I actually talked to her lawyer on the phone, and believe it or not, he was like, yeah, I actually grew up with her. I know she's a little crazy, but he's like, look, just sign the deal, man. It's not going to get better than this. Like, you can go and fight it. It's just going to cost you more money.
So that deal gave her $10,000.
Yes, that deal gave her $10,000 up front.
Now, throughout this time, she's clearly changing her mind on what she wants. So she did tell you, I don't want to be together. You don't need to be involved. But now not only is she saying she wants you to be involved, but she started to send you texts asking if the three of you can just be a family.
Yeah, so there's always been this sense of like, I don't know if I want to say like obsession, but like she always wanted to like portray us as this family, and I always wanted nothing to do with that. Like, I didn't even like this chick, and I'm damn sure not going to date a girl that my friends have hooked up with.
Not only did she want that and was she asking that of you, but she was also sharing content across her social media anytime she was with you and the baby, as if the three of you were this unit.
Yeah, I mean, all the way back from when we first met, and those pictures circulated around, that's her MO. She would take pictures with me and post them, acting like we were a couple.
On Valentine's Day, you post a photo with a random girl who you were just out with. She sees it, and then you get a text from Maria. And I have the text here, so I'm just going to read it.
Okay, yeah.
It's fucking bizarre to me that you can flaunt your social life and this girl on social media, but there's literally nothing of your daughter. I hope she realizes how big of a loser you are. I tried not to say anything, but I feel like you need to know how terrible you look. Our daughter will remember that you were never here. You could have taken your daughter out for Valentine's Day. You're never here for her. Grow up soon, Brett. I won't hesitate to take her from you. Do better. Be better.
That's her.
At the point you received this text, are you sort of just like, there she goes again?
I'm in Chicago. I'm with one of my best friends, and it's Valentine's Day, and I end up going on like a day date with the girl. And, I don't know this girl, like, it's our first time hanging out. And I just take a quick picture of the food, and you see from like neck down that it's a girl, and I post it on my story. It's like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then I start getting these texts from Maria, and this is nothing new at this point. I'm like, okay, whatever. She's like, you should have taken your daughter out for Valentine's dinner. I am like, okay, maybe she's right. So I send Maria $100 to take her and the baby out to dinner for themselves.
Around this time, it seems like some of her messaging to you is getting abusive. And there's one notorious moment where she demands to you that you pay the child support costs almost a month early, and you say no. And she writes back, I hope you fucking die.
Yep, so that was a pretty regular thing. Anytime I didn't want to pay early, and there's many, many months that I had to pay early just because I was getting abused, or she was withholding the baby and using her as a pawn, not letting me see her until I paid. And I have many messages, that'll be online, and I'll be showing those.
At any point, are you concerned that she is unstable and that she's unfit to be caring for the baby?
Yeah, so at one point, she had called my dad freaking out, saying that she was running down the aisles at Lowe's screaming that I kidnapped the child when it's my time sharing, just because I was with Hadley. And I actually called one of her friends on the way to drop the baby back off to her just because she was being so crazy. I was like, hey, you work with her. Do you think she's okay right now? Does she have a weird day? I'm concerned about the baby's safety at this point.
And what did the work friend say?
The work friend said, yeah, she had a normal day. She didn't seem, weird at all. I know she left early today, and that was it.
Okay, so now for people who don't know or didn't listen to my episode with Hadley or just don't know anything about you or the story, Brett is now dating Nurse Hadley, who was a previous guest on this podcast, a lovely woman. She's a hospice nurse, and the two of you meet. She's also a mom from a previous relationship as well, and her understanding was that you were a single dad. The two of you got together, started dating. Luckily, because she's a nurse and now she's involved in your life, so she's around and she has, spent time with your baby. And she told me that everyone was talking about how the baby was born on her due date. And because Hadley has the wherewithal to be able to backtrack and say, okay, well, if this was the baby's due date, then this exact week time frame would have been the baby's conception window. So she was able to go back and look at that conception window and say, let me see where Brett was in that week. Now you could take it away. Where were you in that week, and what did this finding reveal?
So whenever she did the math on that, it was last summer in September maybe, and she starts doing the math on it, and she's like, hey, where were you this weekend? I think I was in California that weekend, and then I was in California this weekend, or Nashville, and all these weekends aren't adding up. She's like, something is just not right here. And at this point, Maria is not letting me see the baby at all because she's mad that I'm dating Hadley, and she doesn't want me to stay there, doesn't want to allow the baby over. And she's also threatening to take me back to court to get full custody. And I'm like, okay, so I'm gearing up to go to court for the first time. And Hadley's like, it's just something's not right. And she's like, I think we should just do a paternity test just for the court. So I was like, okay, that's fine. And at this point, I'm still thinking 100% that it's my child. We do the paternity test. I do it myself. And I send them off, and we're sitting on the couch 2 days later, and I open the email and it says 0%. I thought I was reading it wrong. I mean, right before I even opened the email, me and Hadley talked about it. She was like, what are you going to do if it's not? I was like, I'm telling you right now, it's my kid, 100%. And then just the feeling of sinking and just going ghost white and nauseous that you see 0%. It didn't feel real.
Does the baby look like you at all?
No, it's funny now looking back at pictures, the baby's gorgeous. There's nothing wrong with the baby at all. But she never looked like me. But whenever you're there for the birth and you're trying to find things that, look like, it's oh, she has your toes, blah, blah, blah. Oh, look, she's, the same ears. But no, not at all.
So is this a mouth swab that you did on the baby and on you?
Yep, it's a mouth swab. You do 4 actually for 3 minutes apiece. So it's kind of a invasive, time-consuming test, but you have to do 3 minutes on each side twice. So 4 total swabs. So
you get the results, 0%. Did you believe the test, or did you feel like there must have been an error?
I didn't really believe the test. I called my mom instantly, and I'm crying, she's crying, she doesn't believe it. there's no way those home tests aren't accurate. So I immediately go and get another one, and we do a second test. And this one, after a few days, waiting for the results to come in, like I'm starting to believe, because I'm doing research. I'm like, are these ever wrong? How accurate are they? And I'm doing all this research. So the second one, I'm waiting on. My parents absolutely don't believe the first one. So the second one at this point is mainly to show them. And actually, my mom came down and recorded me doing the second one and watched me mail it off.
And that one came back
That one also
0%.
came back 0%. It was a different company, different brand, different lab.
Throughout this whole time, last summer, as you're doing these tests, was this around the time when Maria was blasting you online to whoever was following her on Facebook?
Yes, this was right after she was posting on Facebook saying that, I put my dick in anything that walks, and, she was trash talking my grandmother, my brother, and, just basically blasting my whole family.
Now, I don't know exactly where you are in the story of like what you've told.
We're like right here at it right now.
We're right here. So
Yeah.
this is kind of it. Was that last DNA test, that second DNA test, was that the court-ordered one?
No, so actually, we did this test, and I immediately go hire a lawyer. And I get the lawyer to draw up paperwork. I'm like, hey, like, I want to be off the birth certificate, because like this is like 2-month process that I didn't tell anyone. Didn't tell Maria. I'm trying to figure out if I even want to keep this quiet, because like I love the baby. I was weighing options of, do I still want to be in the baby's life? Like, I don't have to tell anyone. My parents, and Hadley, the only ones who know. And like, the baby knows me. I'm dad. I start to weigh my options, and then at this time, Maria is just being a lunatic, and I'm just like, I'm seeing an out from Maria. I'm like, okay, like this is insane. Like, she's not even mine, and I can get away from Maria. Like, it's terrible for the baby, but she's 2.5 at this time. Like, she probably won't remember me. Like, it might be best just to go ahead and do this now. I just felt like for the baby and everyone's sake involved, that I should hire a lawyer and try to get off the birth certificate.
I think that the viewpoint of the baby is the saddest part of this whole story.
100%.
And it's just so unfortunate.
I mean, me and my parents and I, we've had to grieve losing a daughter and a granddaughter. And that's something that no parent should ever have to go through. I lost so many first that I'll never get back, from this woman. And now, like, I'll never have a child that's biologically my own. I always thought that having this, weird relationship with Maria and this kid, that I would never be able to find a girlfriend, because you just saw before how she would treat me if I posted a picture with a girl or was trying to date someone. So whenever Hadley comes along, she's like, oh, I'll only date a single parent. I'm like, wait, what? I didn't know that you existed. And it worked great. And we came to this, realization, like, we're both single parents and we don't want any more kids. And it just worked for both of us. I had my biological one, she had hers, and we were going to be, a blended family.
Oh, wow. So is there no chance of you and Hadley having another child together?
I mean, no. This is something that we discussed before, and right before we even opened the first test. We didn't want it to change anything, and I don't want to restart now. Like, I treat her kids as my own now, and the youngest one's 2, and I don't want to restart. It's not fair to make Hadley have to restart just because Maria duped me.
Yeah, I remember she shared that right before you guys opened the test, you guys had this moment together of, if it is a 0% match, where does that leave us? Meaning, are you going to want to get out of the relationship and actually go have a kid with someone, or are you going to want to stay dating a woman who has kids of her own and never have children? And you're right that assuming you do stay with her and you guys stay on the course of what you two had planned together, you really were robbed of your ability to become a biological father.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I'll never get now, because, I'm 28 years old, and I've only had 2 serious girlfriends in my life, Hadley being the second. And, I've always been super picky with, someone I wanted to date. And it's not often that you fall in love and find someone perfect for you. And, it's so unfortunate that, looking on it now, that someone could do this to somebody. I mean, my parents, it not only caused me and Hadley relationship strains heavily. My parents, they were fighting back and forth. My dad was still wanting to see her, and initially my mom was still talking to them. And Maria, even after the second test, she was still reaching out to my dad, after, she was served the paperwork. I mean, it's manipulation. It's just so unfair that someone would be willing to do that and just rob a whole entire family and manipulate them of, a child and a grandchild.
So once you did make that devastating decision to cut ties, how did you say goodbye to this girl that you thought was your daughter?
It was actually the first weekend I had her after the first test. We were going to do the DNA test that day. And, after knowing for 2 weeks that this isn't your kid, I have her again to do the second test. It was just so weird. And I felt like such a fraud that I was, she was like saying, "Dad, Dad," and like loving on me. I'm just like, it was heartbreaking. And it felt like I was like an imposter. And I actually had my mom come and pick her up. And I was just, I was crying too heavily. I didn't want to do the test. And she actually came back down the next day. And that's when we recorded me doing the test on the baby and I.
And how did you leave her? Like, what was do you remember the last time you saw her?
Yeah, it was the day my mom drove away with her right after the second test. And it was just, like I said bye to the baby and told her I loved her. And that was it.
How does it feel now? Do you feel attached still, or have you disconnected emotionally?
I think when you go through something like that, it's almost, I don't want to say it's like a breakup because the person's still out there. I don't know. Like you have to deal with it the same way you deal with loss. And I've never had anyone close, in my family die or any friends like that. So it's not something that you navigate. It's like the blueprint to. Now it's been 8 months. It's liberating now that I can see going back and putting all this stuff together how badly I was abused and manipulated. That it kind of gives me like a sigh of, a relief that I'm away from Maria. But it still makes me feel bad that the baby is still with Maria.
Do you want any updates about the baby's life?
I don't think that would be healthy. There's no point in reopening an old wound.
Yeah. Obviously, people will have to follow you to get the next part of the series that you're going to continue sharing, which is basically the uncovering of all of the lies and the whole web of lies, as you're calling it, that leads us to today. Because what this podcast episode is missing is basically within the last year, a lot of legal court things that happened.
Correct.
That intended to silence you.
Yep. I'm actually still silenced. So at this point, I've seen how the legal system, fails people like me. So I'm just speaking out, and hopefully I can gather enough attention and, one, clear my name and defend Hadley. That'll be in the next video. I'll be defending Hadley and then getting into Maria's friend and how they abused me and Hadley and tried to attack us and make the world hate us, spinning lies.
So are you saying that talking to me right now is probably illegal?
Yeah, I'm breaking the judge's orders. And I think at this point, because, after I got the court order DNA test, that's when Maria took the ex parte temporary restraining order for me not be able to post on social media. And they turned it into a permanent one. And I'm over here like, I just proved that I'm definitely not the father. How am I still being silent? So I wait for my day in court, and it still doesn't change just because the way our laws are written. And I was tired of being silent about it.
Even if your case in this whole paternity fraud situation is valid, is there a chance that you might get in trouble for defying the orders of not speaking? Like, could you be charged for that?
Initially, the first video I just posted last week, I was. And I'll tell you why I'm not too worried about it, because the entire time over the past 6 months, Maria was still, constantly breaking that order. She was sharing videos about the case, commenting underneath them with those, hater accounts. And then, I brought that up in court this past week. I was like, she did this the whole time. And they were like, oh, yeah, we don't care. It's like, okay, so she can do it, I can do it. And actually right now she's still doing it. She's through third parties. So it'd be no different than what I'm doing right now.
On the note of clearing your name, just going back to the child, because I do know that a lot of people seem concerned about, this poor child being the victim of this whole situation. And it's hard enough to lose your dad at 2.5, and she's probably maybe going through her own like physical trauma from missing a person that she knew her whole life. And now as she's growing up, it's one thing to find out that your mom and dad had a big fight and there was a legal battle, but to then one day come across videos of this. Have you ever thought about if she sees this and if that's worth it for your name cleared? And how do you feel about that?
Okay, so clearing my name is one concern, but also there's so many people who are abused silently, and they never get the validation that I'm trying to get for myself. One, you're either too scared to, or abusers and narcissists, they want to keep you quiet. That's how they can stay in control. And as far as the kid goes, I know people in my life very well that have grown up with parents who weren't ideal, and their whole life they thought that, oh, this person's only mean to me, he's there's something wrong with me, this person's so mean to me only. It's because no one else is saying, oh yeah, like that person sucks, like they're the worst person ever, like we don't even like her. And having to maybe her see this one day, like as a parent, you can keep your kid off social media if you really want to. That's just something that she's gonna have to grow up and see. Like, I'm sorry, but some people deserve to be shown their true colors. They can't hide in the shadows forever.
Just one last question on Maria, because I feel we have no idea who she is. I mean, we've seen videos of her, we've seen what she has said, and we can formulate our theories about her. But from your honest standpoint and knowing what you know, if anything, about her upbringing and her past and her history, do you feel like she has some emotional trauma and that she's dealing with major mental health issues herself?
I don't want to speak on her mental health, but or her family troubles. That's her story to tell. But I will say that I know of things that probably have affected her, and it's probably not her fault that she's the way she is. But it doesn't mean you can't. People are dealt those cards every day, and they choose between right and wrong, and she's just choosing the wrong way.
I can say that I've had episodes of this show where I've brought on someone to tell a story, and I always try to make it clear that there are obviously two sides to every story, and based on who you're talking to or who you hear from, you might form an opinion that sways you in one direction or the other. But I have to say, you showed up to this conversation and approaching telling your side of the story with facts and receipts and a binder of data and timestamps and information that is kind of unshakable, on top of actually having friends and family members to back up every step of the way, as well as scientific evidence and tests to prove your
Correct.
side of the story.
I've seen how this has gone before without coming with stuff like this, and video 6 is actually going to tell you exactly why I have a binder with all these receipts.
I am inclined to agree with you and your take on the fact that abusers, in whatever form it is, need to be stood up to. And I think it is really brave that you're going against a court order to speak out, and hearing you share about how you had to grieve that loss. That wasn't even really an element that many people are probably thinking of with this story, but that's probably the saddest, worst part of the story. So thank you for opening up about that. I think there's probably so many people out there who are following along, listening, and just hoping that justice is served in some way. If you could map it out in your perfect case scenario, what is justice?
Justice for this would be, me being able to help other people. Like I know that my case at this current standpoint, until laws change, I'll bring the attention, and I want to be able to lobby and get laws changed so I can protect men's rights in situations like this. Because not only does it happen to people who aren't married, it happens to married couples all the time too. And I just think that if you're going to be making a commitment like that, women should be able to keep their biological trust and promise to men, and knowingly let them know that that's not enough. You can't trust everyone. People are lied to every day, and married people lie just like single people lie. And it's just the stigma needs to be taken away of DNA tests, accusing somebody. It just needs to be all the cards are on the table. This is what we know. It's like adopting a kid. If it's not yours, you're going in with those decisions that I'm going to raise this kid as my own.
So, in short, are you proposing that in every hospital or at every birth, there is a DNA test done upon birth?
I think anyone who would disagree with that their husband or boyfriend should probably get a paternity test. They're hiding something. If a man, he knows that he did his job to make the baby, if he is at work and, Jody comes over and they actually make the baby, he doesn't know that. Only the woman, if she's not being truthful, he's going into this blind thinking he's the only possible viable father. Like, there's no reason to question it.
I think it's a really interesting conversation to have and might give some women pause, primarily because historically, I think it's more common for a man to be unfaithful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is probably statistically true, but whether or not it is, it's just from a societal standpoint, that's kind of the norm. And if you heard that there was some infidelity, you often believe that it was the man.
I completely agree with you.
But you're right that from the side of the man, if the woman was unfaithful, the man might never know. And I'm sure your story has happened to other people, many other people in the history of humankind who have then gone on to raise the kid and maybe even found out about this DNA way later in life when it is way more complicated and emotionally damaging.
Yeah, I mean, you hear about it all the time, and it sucks when it happens at an older age. But I think that it is just a basic human right that everyone should know who their real parents are.
Do you have any thoughts on what justice in your perfect scenario would look like for Maria?
If I was her, I would just own it. I would be like, yeah, like I fucked up. Maybe seek some professional help on why she would do something like this. I really think that that's a lost cause. People like her, narcissists, in my opinion, they won't get help. They'll always point the finger at someone else and try to deflect.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing this in the midst of your saga going out on your socials. Tell everyone where they can find you and what's happening there.
Yep, I am on Instagram and TikTok mainly. My Instagram is at Brett Fairley, and then TikTok is at Brett Fairley01.
And you guys, this story is blowing up. Just last night, Brett had, I think it was 130,000 Instagram followers, and now it's 24 hours later and you're at what? Oh, almost 170. People are glued to this, and I think everyone's expecting a Netflix series or a Netflix documentary to come out of this insane story.
That's definitely a comment favorite.
Yes. Thank you for coming on, and we're all wishing you justice and the best of luck.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Real Stuff podcast. If you're liking the show, please head over to Apple or Spotify and leave the show a written review. If you're watching on YouTube, drop a comment down below and join in the conversation. And if you're feeling called to be a guest on the show, visit lucyfink.com/apply and tell us your story. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your attention with us, and we will see you next time on the Real Stuff podcast.
Please note that this episode may contain paid endorsements and advertisements for products and services. Individuals on the show may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to in this episode.